unless there's a reason. Unless there's a reason to stop or not go. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Today is June 13th, 2024. It's somewhat of a warm day out there. I appreciate the WFRC keeping that in mind and making this a Zoom option. I think it helps a lot of us. This is the Wasatch Front Economic Development District Committee meeting for the June 13th. I'd like to welcome all those online and, of course, those in the boardroom down at the WFRC. We're going to start the meeting this morning with just a roll call. So Andrea Pearson will be doing that. If you were online and not noted, please do that now so that Andrea can make note of who's with us on this meeting. So with that, Andrea, do you want to go ahead and name those people that are with us?
Great, I will. Here in our boardroom, we have Andrew Gruber, Ted Knowlton, Marsha White, Jordan Chandler, Rosie Hernandez, and then myself. And online, we have Chuck Spence, Blaine Fackrell, Debbie Wynn, Jason Godfrey, Lon Crowell, and Joy Petro, Gwen Curvin, Linda Cabrales, hope I'm close, Gage Forer, Kirsten Swinyard, Nick Fritz, Meg Townsend, Natalie Bowen, Brandon Wood, Jake Maxwell, Matt Ryan, Bryce Wurtzbaugh, Ty Hoffman, Sean Milne, Michelle Larson, Michael's AI note taker, Madison Aviles, Chris Roybal, Susie Becker, Rochelle Custer, Sarah Lawless, Greg Bisping, Karen Lang, Christina Oliver, Tiffany McClelland, Janae Shaw, Sherry Stevens, Mike Moore, Byron Head, Scott Cuthbertson, and Miranda Jones-Cox.
Great, thanks, Andrea. So I appreciate all those taking the time out to be with us this afternoon. I'd give a special shout out to co-chair Mayor Wynn. Appreciate you being there as well. Feel free to jump in at any point in time. With that, let's go ahead and get started. We'll call this meeting to order. I'd look first for an approval of the minutes, which you should have held on March 12th, 2024.
I'll make that motion, Christina Oliver.
All right. And did we have a second?
I'll second the motion, Mayor Wynn.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate it. Okay, we have a motion and a second. I'm going to place the motion. All those in favor of approval of those minutes, which would be March 12th, 2024, please say aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Let's go to the chair's report now. I just want to congratulate the staff of WFRC on all their hard work, but they've been working especially hard to implement the items listed in that 2023 through the 2028 comprehensive economic development strategy that everybody on this committee is very much aware of. We started that in earnest here last year. The plan specifically supports the Wasatch Choice vision and its key strategy that we're aware of, which is transportation choices, housing options, parks and public spaces, and city and town centers. With that said, we thought it might be helpful to everybody to remind you that the SIDS, key strategy anchors, have a better understanding of the Wasatch Choice vision, as we've discussed in the past. So I'm going to turn some time over to Marsha White here in just a second to share this information. Marsha is going to show us a quick overview of the Wasatch Choice vision and then present a few slides. The questions that are going to be asked during that slideshow are: what are the four key anchors of the WFEEDD Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy? We've talked about those anchors. I think everybody just needs a little bit reminder. Two, how can I help promote the four key anchors in each of your organizations? Three, what is one word that describes something that you really love about the city you live in? Four, in contrast, what are the things that you may dislike about your city, if any? And lastly, how does a strong city and town center benefit your position in your organization or town? So with that, Marsha, would you like to go ahead and present your slides?
Yeah, I'd love to. I hope I would love to. Let's see. So we all know that, I'm just gonna kind of go through this, and you've probably seen a lot of this, but I just want to give us a refresher on the Wasatch Choice Vision, what it is, what we tried to do and what we tried to accomplish, and bring the 2023 to 28 SEDS into this process. So we know that Utah is growing, and we always talk about, we have a plan. It's called the Wasatch Choice Vision. We look at this plan regularly, trying to update maps and, you know, are we going in the right direction? So it's not like it's just sitting there somewhere on a shelf. We're really trying to look at it and update it on a regular basis. So the Wasatch Choice Vision has 4 key strategies. The commissioner just talked about those: transportation choices, housing options, parks and public spaces, and city and town centers. And we know that if we can start to bring all of those things together, you'll start to see where city and town centers, roads, transportation options, parks and public spaces, and how they all work together. And so we really take that as the umbrella of our work, and using that as our foundation to build all the other things that we do on top of it. We know that we intuitively know that we have goals and benefits that come out of that. So we can create livable communities, and we get clean air and good quality transportation choices. But we also know that we can, by doing so and creating these city and town centers, that we can access 30% more job opportunities, that the household income that is spent on transportation will get reduced, that we can conserve our agricultural land. And I threw that one in there for Commissioner Fackrell. We can save $5 billion in local infrastructure costs. And a lot of times people talk about how much our water resources are being depleted, but we know that if we can start to build along these city and town centers, that we can actually save water. We have 3 major plans, if you will, that within our internal structure that we develop, that also rounds up into the Wasatch Choice Vision. We create the regional transportation plan. Many of you know about the transportation and land connection, and working with local city and towns to help with their ordinances, land use. And then the third one is what we just went through, and that is the comprehensive economic development strategy. So we talk a lot about understanding what access to opportunity is, and access to opportunity means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, but what it really comes down to is being able to connect your schools, your transportation, your childcare, your education, your parks, your transit, and those public spaces, and even grocery stores all together, so that we can have that access to opportunity without with being more we're being more I'm losing the word, Ted. We're trying to be really conscious of trying to create these city and town centers to bring all of this access to opportunity. So with that,
Marcia, can I just back up
Yep.
for 1 sec? I'll just note on access to opportunity. In part, it's about the residents of our region, all of us from our homes, being able to easily access the things that are important to us, like you're going through school, work, shopping, but just as much for businesses, for employers. What access do those employers, and those of you that are employers or economic development leaders, what access do employers in your areas have to workers to come work at the places of business, to customers? So thinking about access to opportunity is relevant for people in their homes, and it is also relevant to a thriving economy for employers.
thanks, yeah. I knew he'd have some good words. So with that, I decided, you know, it'd be really a good idea to have a little interaction today because it is a hot day and I know we're probably all tired of some Slidos, but I think it'd be really fun to join in on this Slido to ask and just to see. So if you take your phone out, take a quick picture of that, or you can go to slido.com and put that number in.
Okay, so we're asking everybody to participate now,
Yeah,
right? Pull out your phone and go to slido.com or just scan the QR code
Oh, that's a good idea.
right there on your screen. Just scan it.
Okay, I think we've done that.
Okay.
it's always fun to see what's on the backs of everybody's phones too. So the first question is, what are the 4 key anchors of the WFEDD Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy? And I thought that would be a good, let's start with that one. And see if, oh man, nobody's swinging from the chandeliers yet. All right, thank you.
So we should vote for 4.
Yeah,
There you go.
okay, so I'm just gonna talk through these and if you want to still vote, you can get in there, but the first one that made it out there is promote a diverse business environment. And we're not talking about diversity as in making sure that we have, you know, a diverse population as far as, you know, economic status or those kind of things. We're talking more about a diverse and making business environment, making sure that we have a diversity of businesses within our community so that we are not at all the whims of what might happen if there's a downturn in one of the businesses or one of the sectors of the market. Promoting city and town centers is very, obviously we just talked about that, but that's really important. Assisting economic development capacity is important. And let me just see, did we do last one? I can't see the last one. No swinging from the chandeliers. But we are the economic development capacity. So assisting with the economic development capacity. So the top 4 are the ones that we are the 4 key anchors. We do create funding opportunities, but more through the EDA and helping assure that we can get some money, but that is not one of the key 4 anchors. Okay, let's talk about how can I, thinking through that. So if you think about the key anchors in your organization or key anchors, how can that help, how can you help promote those 4 key anchors in your organization? And this is just kind of a throw it out there, free for all. So thinking about the diversity of the, you know, can I bring in an innovation center, or is that something that you can help promote? Because that helps with diversity and making sure that you have different opportunities within your organization. And then there's some, I saw Jake and Kirsten, you know, what can you do as far as city and town centers and, you know, thinking through how do you help with the planning and those kind of different areas. There you go. The anonymous. Those are great comments. And I hope that one of the things in our SEDS that you'll see is actually helping execute plans. It is actually helping educate through newsletters and workshops. think outside the normal box. Like that. Yeah, I like tying them to our strategic plans, goals and objectives. As I've been out talking to other partners, I've really been trying to share with other partners our strategic plans and goals and listening to what they have going on. Oh, that was a loud sneeze. Should we guess who that was? Did you guys hear that sneeze? That was somebody in our. Those are all great. Those are really, really great. And I like that act on the details in the sets. What is a TOC?
Transit-oriented communities.
Ah, thank you. Let me go on to the next slide. So what I wanted to do with this one is I'd like to ask this question, and in a lot of times I make people shut their eyes, but I don't want to right after lunch. But just think about one word that you really like, or three, that describes something about the city you live in. You know, quality of life, transit, green. Is it green? Is it, yeah, you get the idea. Like the people, that's awesome. Okay, I want to live in the place where somebody said tranquility. Vibrant. No, it didn't sound like.
You guys can all participate too.
I'm participating.
Good.
There's a comment in the chat from Commissioner Fackrell. You need to come up to the canyon.
Range to river leader, I like that, proximity. Those are great, those are really good. So in contrast then, what is the one thing you dislike about your city? Right? No restaurants. Yeah, no restaurants. I like the UGG traffic. It's water. I'm hoping that there, yeah. Congestion, traffic, no trails, loud mufflers, bureaucracy, traffic.
It's water is, I wonder about that one.
Fear of growth. Yeah. Singing things about non-residents.
Hmm.
Huh. Interesting. Superiority complex, that's funny. Well, I don't have any, I don't have any other slides that I wanted to share, but what I wanted to do is really try to work us into the thought process of that quality of life, why we like city and town centers, and you described the things about what's really important. And I think you'll start to see that and hear that as we work through our next presentation. But thank you so much. it's just always fun to start off with a little bit of thought around that. So with that, Commissioner Thor, I'll turn it back to you.
Thanks. Great presentation, Marcia. I think that anybody that lives along the Wasatch Front, and those of us that see the growth, understand land issues, we understand transportation, we understand that, those are key concepts that were just brought up in that Slido presentation that we want to make sure we try to maintain the quality we have while we're dealing with that growth. And so that's why those key concepts, strategies become very important as we look at what we're going to look like in the next 10, 15, 20 years for our kids and grandkids. So I appreciate that presentation. And I think it's very important as we tie it in with economic development. I know Chris Royball's on the Zoom. We just recently met with a large international company looking at Weber County, and they brought up those same issues: transportation, location to schools, and employees, human resources. Where do they get the resources for that company? So we have to keep all that in mind. At the same time, make good decisions so that we can encourage the right type of economic development. So thank you very much. Chris, do you have anything you'd like to add to that? I think, you're kind of the top of the game on that.
No, Gage, I think you said it well. A lot of things now that in economic development that we didn't necessarily think about, 15 or 20 years ago are all in play now, whether it's water resources or other infrastructure resources that, because there wasn't such a stress on it back then, is a lot more important now. So, yeah, guys are doing great work. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Anyone else have any comments or questions for Marcia or Andrew before we move forward? All right, seeing none. Thanks very much again, Marcia, for that great presentation. Let's go to our section of the agenda for public comment. Anyone online with us this afternoon that has a public comment on anything related to the agenda or past agendas? Is any hands going up, Rosie or Andrea?
I don't see anyone, Commissioner.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, appreciate that again. Let's go to our next agenda item if we can, which would be the Layton City Economic Development Strategy Plan. We have with us again, thank you very much, Jason Godfrey from Better City and Lon Crowell from Layton City. And this is a project that can really identifies and shows how a city can look through a lens of both the economic development and the promotion of the city and town centers, and how important that is to the growth of a particular city. The project that they have been working on has been funded through the Transportation and Land Use Connection Program, and the project is still underway. We thought it would be a great example of how to show you today how a city can create better city and town centers, which we just agreed after this presentation is critical, and at the same time promote better economic development. I'm going to turn the time now over to Jason from Better City and Lon Cromwell from Layton City to give us more information about this project that I've heard great things about. So Jason, Lon, do you guys want to take it over?
Yeah, appreciate it. Sharing the wrong thing there. First off, I want to echo your comments, Commissioner Floor, that what the Wasatch Front EDD, the Wasatch Front Regional Council has done with the SEDS is really remarkable. That we're only, the ink's barely dry on it, and then they're charging forward and moving those initiatives forward. And that's really impressive.
It is
not common, I must say. So,
we got a great staff there, Jason. So
I could not agree more. And this is a really exciting program because this is one of the pillars there is the town centers, right? And as we were coming up with those pillars, the question was, okay, Wasatch vision creates a really powerful vision of why, what a town center is and why it's important. But then the question is how, how do we get from where we're at to having more town centers? And so this is a really visionary project. I've never seen anything like it. And we'll talk about some of the details of it. But it really is creating a playbook that how can Layton, at a very granular, specific site level, move toward implementing these town centers. So first off, we'll start with Lon is going to give us, Lon's can introduce himself, and he's with the city of Layton, and he's got a great perspective on the history and the strategies surrounding the town center. So I'll have Lon go first. Oh, and then so he'll do an overview. We'll talk about the Layton project, and then we'll talk about some of the, these, what's so unique about this project, because I think in the way this project is constructed is a real template for other communities to move forward. And I think that's one of the key roles of the Wasatch Front EDD is to say, how can we templatize these things? How can we create standard processes for the communities within the region to move forward on these projects? And then we'll talk about the specific process with Layton and some of the lessons learned. So Lon, do you want to introduce yourself and then take over?
Hey, Lon, you're on mute. There you go.
Yes, thank you, Jason. You're gonna advance these, right? These slides
sir.
for me, correct? Okay. First of all, thank you WFRC for the grant. This is a big project for Layton and a study that we haven't done in the past, and it means a great deal. I have a lot of slides. I'm not an expert. The information I'm going to give you is just things that I've learned and observed over my 26-year career. I'm the Economic Development Manager and the Deputy Director of the Community and Development Department here in Layton City. And with that, I'll be moving through these slides rather quickly. Some of this information many of you may already know, but I hope to give you a different perspective on town centers. Right here you see photographs of basically the first known settlement pattern or settlements of humankind in the world, on the other side of the world. You can see that they're very compact. They were originally developed as a way to access food or goods and services, food primarily, and also to defend themselves against their enemies. As the population grew around the world, cities were created. Right here you see photographs of really some of the most beloved and traveled to cities in the world. You can see a pattern as you look at these. They all have a central core, which is a big deal. And they grow out from there, but they're all similar in nature, the way they developed over time. This pattern is still in place today, especially in the newer cities. And right now we're mostly focused on really the T4, T5 sector, which is the outside suburban areas that grows together between the major cities that have developed over time. But this is known in the planning world as the urban to rural transect. And it's a pattern you can follow and really understand better how these cities have developed over time. Along with the development, there were early trade routes and your first transportation networks. There are several famous ones. The Silk Road is known very well. The spice trade routes kind of follow the Silk Road. And then there were some over here as well with the Native American tribes. So this is a phrase I've known for most of my life. All roads lead to Rome, but I really haven't studied that much. This right here is an image that shows how all those roads lead to Rome. And it's pretty amazing. All of that area of the world did lead to Rome. For Layton City, I-15 and Highway 89 are our road to Rome, for lack of a better word or better phrase, sorry. And we get a lot of traffic from them.
Lon, I've often heard Layton City compared to Rome.
It's the Rome of Davis County.
It is the Rome of Davis County. That's true.
Thank you, Ted. I appreciate that. Can we market that?
Yes, that was for the mayor. She can use that. Yes.
We haven't picked a title for the plan yet. I mean,
There you go. So here we kind of see how America developed with our transportation network. Obviously the trading routes for the Native American tribes had various trails and networks prior to colonization. The colonial road system actually followed the Native American routes along the East Coast. And some of those were also used for the Oregon Trail. Over time, that led to the railroad system, and which ultimately led to the highway system as well. Main Street was a big deal when cities started to populate across the country. It's interesting to read some of the information you'll see here shortly, but Main Street it really was the place to be, the social hub of America in these various cities. You can see that quote, pedestrians were walking in the streets anywhere they wanted, whenever they wanted, usually without looking, prior to the automobile. And so it wasn't a concern. These main streets were compact because people had to travel to get there. And when these main streets and when America was more developed into these cities as they populated across the country, these city centers were no longer developed to defend ourselves, but they were still developed for convenience. And then with the advent of the invention of the automobile and the improvements of their abilities, Main Street became a really big deal, really Americana. They were at one point known as the most iconic image of America. And also, there's a quote I found here that said Main Street, really it demonstrates the impact of Main Street, the fact that we're trying to recreate it again today, to nurture that sense of community, because it was where everybody went and everybody connected, similar to plazas and other similar developments in the European countries. The interstate system changed everything. So in the 1950s, 1956, the Federal Aid Highway Act was created, and the interstate system was constructed for defense, actually, to move military vehicles across the country and people. But it was at the time seen as the greatest public works project in history. And basically it mentioned that every item that anyone had bought had been on the interstate system, and so they considered it quite the project and quite the impact to the American people. At the same time, in 1956, the same year, it's not by coincidence, the invention of the indoor mall was developed, the first one. And this was to provide convenience for people to go to one location and purchase all of the products that they were looking for. This has developed into different building types over the years, the regional shopping center, the power center, and the lifestyle center. And now we see the mall evolving again. And it will be definitely interesting to see how that evolves over the next few years. But at one point, the shopping mall was selected as one of the top 50 wonders that has revolutionized the lives of consumers, which was interesting to see. So changes have occurred over the last few years, as you're all aware. People, I don't know if they are just revolting against the automobile-centric mall developments. But actually, there's been many studies, not only with the development of the smart code, but there's other people that have developed or actually studied or researched this, really the way people perceive where they are when they're at a mall or whether they're shopping along Main Street. And the studies have shown that when they're walking along a blank wall, they actually, it says their mood states took a dive. It's known as an emerging disaster in street psychology. In other words, when you're walking along the street, if there's not something interesting, if there's not a window or a door or another architectural feature, we lose interest rather quickly. As mentioned, Main Street stood for the local, the place to be, and is now becoming an importable model of planning and development that can be set up almost anywhere is this quote, which is true. Many planners try to recreate this across the country because of the need really to create a sense of place and to better the quality of life for their residents. Oh, you can go back, sorry. Can you go back, Jason? One of the issues in the planning world that we've come across is when we try to create this in a place where it doesn't belong, where the market really won't accept this type of development. It's been an obstacle, but where it can belong, where the market accepts it, it's productive. So why is it important to Layton City? We originally evolved from sprawl. That's how Layton became. And really it's Hill R4 space, the growth that's occurred over there over the years. And I-15 that's created demand for retail in this area. We've always been in a great location. We do not have a formal downtown like all of the other really great places and great cities people like to visit and travel to, that they spend money to go to around the world. And so this created for us a demand to have some type of center. We continue to work on that, but the town center concept actually creates that environment that we're looking for. And they have really a greater meeting here in Layton City, really probably the same for any other community that doesn't have an actual downtown where you have higher population and greater density. They create a sense of place and a center at the pedestrian scale that allows really that experience to be the experience and sense of place that we all want. So what are the benefits of a town center? As I mentioned, you have a greater sense of place. You have really higher density, which is good because we're going to grow whether we like it or not. And so we create this place where we do have higher density. We create a gathering place. We create more demand for retail because of the rooftops. We have a demand for more transportation options because we have a higher density and a higher population that needs those different transportation options. It's more walkable. It's more affordable to develop in a compact way. It preserves vacant land for longer because instead of developing the vacant land on the outside fringes, we're developing and providing housing more compactly in these town centers. Reduces retail saturation and retail and commercial sprawl. That was a product of the, I guess, the 60s through the 80s. And it's been a battle really here to try to reduce that. And we can see the market pushing back and really moving away from the mid-block areas into the intersections and centers. So it combats multifamily sprawl as well. Instead of allowing them anywhere, we can provide specific locations where we prefer to have them. And it provides an experience that draws people to be there longer. Some of the challenges, you can't force an urban product into a non-urban context unless the market accepts that. In other words, unless it's in a location where it still meets those market needs to develop as it would anywhere else. And then the other one is, and this is kind of the Achilles heel of the planning profession because we push this concept quite a bit, but it doesn't matter what we do. At some point, all the remaining developable land will develop unless it's preserved, similar to Boulder, Colorado. The issues there is the land becomes more expensive, housing becomes more expensive, living becomes unattainable in those areas. And so it really doesn't solve the problem. But we do know that with the town center, the population will always be higher in those areas if we plan correctly, and it'll still create that sense of place in the environment that we prefer.
Mr. Chair, do you mind if I just do, Lon, can I ask you just a question while you're on that slide? Can you?
Sure.
You talked about the market. What is your sense of it? If Layton has this plan for a town center, do you think the market then would come? Are you getting inquiries from the development community? What is your sense of the market?
Well, we've located our town centers specifically in locations where we have higher volume roadways, higher volume traffic. We know with more rooftops, we'll have the demand for the other side of that, which is the retail and services. You still need to meet, especially the retail market, you need the rooftops, you need the household income, you need the traffic. And so that's why we've chosen the locations we have specifically, because that's the areas in the city where we have that already. We're not trying to recreate it somewhere where that doesn't exist. It'd be pretty difficult to do that where it doesn't exist already.
I guess forgive me for pressing on this just a touch, but I guess on the one hand, there's the question of retail demand. And on the other hand, there's the question of demand for living in a walkable setting. And what's your sense of the second aspect of that?
At this point, I think that if we allowed it, we have the demand to be that the high density housing would be built on every street corner in Layton. And so we don't have a concern for that side of it. It's really going through a planning process and having all the policies and zoning in place to allow it to happen in a well thought out way that will allow for the housing and the services and the retail.
Thank you.
And this last slide, this just shows our general plan that we adopted a few years ago. It took several years to get this adopted, and there was a long process that took place to make it happen. Town centers were part of our general plan, and they were very well thought out. And really, it's just to repeat. It's the same. The reason for this is the same as I discussed previously. Is to create these places that more than just shopping centers, more than just strip malls, but places where people really want to come and live or visit, to walk and to enjoy something other than just the shopping experience. And so that's my slide presentation. With that, I'll turn over to Jason, and we'll show you how we're thinking about that.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks, Lon. Ted, I want to go back to your question, because I think you really nailed one of the key components of town centers, one of the key challenges. As part of this process, we interviewed a lot of developers, and everybody loves town centers. Everybody loves mixed use development. The problem is the definition, right? So you asked, would they, is there a market for mixed use development in town centers? Absolutely. We'll do a multifamily. We'll put a coffee shop on the corner, and there you got your mixed use development, right? Or we'll put a nail salon, and we've got mixed use development. Yeah. And it's just understanding the definition and broadening the scope and saying, no, we're talking about an actual neighborhood, a cohesive environment. Lon showed some of those slides of places where there's a sense of place, and it's actually true walkability. So that's the gap, and really helping understand the definition. And so part of this project, a key part of this project, is to identify what is a town center and how do you get there, and how does it make financial sense for developers. So does that make sense, Ted?
Yeah, for sure.
It's a great question. So to step back, this is the economic development district. Why are we talking about town centers, right? What's the connection between kind of a planning concept and economic development? This is a really great study that they looked at two metrics. They said, let's look at communities that have, and chart their employment growth. So is their economy growing based on against two metrics? One is quality of life, and one is the quality of the business environment. Things like how easy is it to do business and the kind of infrastructure they have in place for business. Well, quality of life is 10 times more predictive of a community's ability to grow than the quality of the business environment. So you get the placemaking right, you make a great place where people want to live, then you'll be successful. And if you think about it, in the 21st century, what's the number one most important natural resource?
Labor.
Human capital, right? Labor. It's not gold or oil or anything like that. It's human capital. So you create an environment that attracts the most important resource, you will succeed as an economy. And then transportation. So part of this analysis is to look at transportation. And Marcia alluded to it, but in the SEDS document, you know, a 5% reduction, or if a traffic analysis zone that has 50% town center characteristics has a 5% reduction in commute times. So, you know, these are significant numbers. We're talking, you know, hundreds of thousands of minutes in commute times that could be saved, and lots of CO2 by going towards a more town center centric building pattern. So the Layton project in particular is to develop a comprehensive economic development plan that focuses on these, you know, the nexus of transportation, livability, and then creating great senses of place, and looking at how, you know, changes in transportation, how changes in living patterns will impact all of that. So here's the process. It's, you know, it kind of looks like the standard process where you start with research and do the community engagement and so forth, and then you come up with specific recommendations. What's different is this visualization that as we select key actionable town centers where a difference can be made, there'll actually be not only the economic analysis, but also the planning and visuals that say, here's what we want this area to look like. And this is another way to look at it. This is really the genius, I think, of this plan as it's been put together. Thanks, Marcia and the Wasatch Front team, that you have your standard economic analysis, you have your shareholder input, but you also add X-ray analysis, looking at, and we'll see that in a second, but looking at it from a planning perspective is synthesizing all of that to say what makes sense for this community. How do you build in the future that incorporates, you know, the hardcore economics plus the sense of place plus what the community wants. So when you look at the analytics, it's not good enough just to say, oh, here's the growth and here's your demographics. You have to understand what those mean and project forward. So for example, in the SEDS, we looked at, you know, if the area's demographics continue on their current trend, and the kids that are in school get educational attainment as they have historically, you're going to have a wide mismatch between the skills that people are attaining and the skills that are required in the workforce, right? In other words, project forward and say, what do these trends mean? For housing, there's a big generational difference between what Gen Z wants for housing and what boomers want for housing, right? So what kinds of homes are we building? Yeah, and are we building for Gen Z, or are we building for boomers, or, you know, or millennials? That makes a big difference, right? Because is your housing stock going to be relevant 15, 20 years from now? And when you look at entrepreneurship, you know, Layton's done a spectacular job of leveraging their relationship in the proximity to Hill Air Force Base and creating a manufacturing hub that's just like world class, right? But there's also a lot of entrepreneurship. So what can be done to, again, foster this human capital and make Layton also a hub for that? When we look at real estate, you know, you can look at lease rates, absorption, and so forth, but then you project future needs. So based on trends, how much office space do you need in 5 years or in 10 years? How much commercial do you need in 5 years or 10 years? And we've done some really interesting analysis to say, where's retail going? We hear about the retail apocalypse. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Where's Layton at on that continuum? Is it happening? And then we heard about high-end retail. What does that mean for Layton? So really getting, not just being satisfied with the, you know, the standard analysis, but saying, let's drill down and find out what's specific to this community that will make a difference. And then looking at transportation. So it's really interesting. Layton has lots of jobs, right? And they have people, but very few people actually stay in Layton. You have, you know, a whole bunch of professionals that commute out every day, and a whole bunch of retail people that commute in every day, and other people that commute in for the manufacturing type jobs. So that that raises the question, how can we build an economy around, or at least strengthen the jobs that people are commuting out for? You want to have an impact on commute times? Well, whatever they're doing, let's do it in Layton. So I'm going to go over these X-ray analyses, and I'll do it rather quickly. But if you want to stop on any of them, let me know. But this is the 9 sites that that are the study areas, saying, okay, these are potential areas for further development as town centers. And then the first one is, okay, where are the major arteries, right? Where's the roads to Rome, so to speak, and how do they interact with these sites? And then you overlay these arterial roads. Is there a question? Okay. And here's one thing that's really interesting. So if you, can you see my cursor, by the way?
Yes.
Okay, good. So if you live here and you wanted to go not far, but just to here, how would you go about that? Well, you have to go kind of around, and then you have to cross this major artery and kind of go around to work your way over there. So if there were a park, we'll see parks in a second, is it really walkable? Is it realistic? Have we accommodated this walkability? If you compare Layton versus like some of the Pioneer Legacy layouts, right? It's very much walkable with the grid system. You can get from anywhere to anywhere, and it's quite easy to walk. The modern templates that we're building now create more cul-de-sacs and kind of funky looking streets that don't lend themselves to walking. So let's look at land use. So Layton is highly residential, and this one's interesting. It's the multifamily is really concentrated. So it, in terms of land use, if you compare it to single family, it's very sparse. Here's the parks, and this is interesting also because there are really large scale parks, but not as many pocket parks and walkable parks. So these are all things to consider when you're saying, what kind of a walkability community is there? Job density, where are the jobs? And then compare it to, the town centers. Are we having, is that a focal point for employment? And then commercial. So once again, the legacy approach that Lon talked about is, you build around the interstates, around the transportation. Certainly that's the model that's been employed in Layton. So, but if you look at town centers, we're saying the retail and the office and even the jobs need to be in centers where there's concentric circles of population around them, right? That's, if you're going to try and incorporate more walkability and less commute times, you shouldn't always be having to go to the major centers. You should have little town centers. So some opportunities there. This is a really interesting insight that 1,000 feet, and this is from our partners, Urban Design Associates, and they've studied great places internationally. This one's from Boulder, Pearl Street in Boulder. But any place where you say that's just a fantastic place to be, if you were to measure it on Google Earth, it'd probably be around 1,000 feet, between 1,000 and 1,200 feet. It's not a big scale. You just have to do something really cool and make it compact. And so, if you look on the left, you see the scale of the wall. That, wow, 1,000 feet. You could, up here or down there, there's lots of 1,000 feet opportunities to create something that's really iconic. And that's the focus. And this really helps because when you're talking about doing a really powerful town square, we're not talking about a mile stretch. It's really just a couple of blocks, really something that's cohesive, has a sense of place, it's intentional, and that's all it takes. Okay, I want to stop here. I've got a couple more lessons learned, but stop here for any conversation or questions.
Anybody have any comments or questions? Mayor Petro, I know you're online, or I don't know. Check.
Yes, I have a question, if I may. With all of this, you have all these centers or things that you're trying to put together, and they've been in the past, and as the history went, each city or each town went through growth phases and so forth. But now that you've got a city like Layton or Clearfield or any of those on that side, you've got, I mean, you've already built out one town center, so now you're bringing out another town center. How is that going to work with the type of what you're trying to bring about?
That is a phenomenal question, Commissioner Fackrell. That's been a real key point of this. Is all right. There's 9 places that have been identified that are today, with 2 exceptions, that today are kind of functioning as town centers, but maybe not the iconic kind of town center. So then the question is, how can you move towards that? And so part of this process is to say, you know, this is the old Main Street, and frankly, there's just not a lot to be done because it's pretty much built out, and there's you know, there's some development that's happening, but you've got the street going down the middle of it. You're kind of landlocked there. You have some greenfield sites up here on 89 and Gordon and out here that, yes, absolutely, you can develop them from scratch and create really iconic town centers, right? And then you have some that are kind of in between, where maybe there are some redevelopment opportunities, you know, maybe the mall site, for example, and maybe here some changes in retail. And so that's the process, is saying, okay, rank these sites as this one, absolutely, we can move forward and do some things, make some plans that'll make this a great site. And number 9 is, let's kind of create some visions and some strategies to make it better, to kind of move forward. But it's really maybe not in the short term, at least, an opportunity for a complete makeover. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It's the only thing I see is within all of this, it just seems to me like the cities become more big cities, and that's okay for if you want a big city. Of course, we don't, so stay on that side of the mountain for us, please. And so, I mean, but I just see it. I mean, Syracuse is another prime example of where, you know, it just seems like you get one city started, you do another city, and then another city, another little area or business center. And I mean, I see it happening. I saw what happened with Centerville. I see what happens with Farmington. Farmington is another good example where they planned it, but now where do they go? And so I'm just hoping that in all of this planning that you're doing, that you're not, I mean, if you're going to create a complete big city with everything walkable within that area, then you become like downtown Salt Lake. I don't know. That's just some questions I have for you in all of this that you're planning.
Well, and that's a great point, that, and we'll talk about that in a minute. What does walkability mean? And the reality is, you know, it's not like we have a subway that takes you to somewhere that you can just get out and walk, right? There's certain infrastructural realities that we're working with. So I think the point of this is, how do we move closer to more density, better land use, you know, better property values that don't have as much infrastructure costs with them. So it's really on a continuum from like a pure walkable neighborhood to just, you know, pure suburbia. How can we move towards that? And it's the intentionality, because as we talked about before, left to the private market, you're just gonna get more strip malls. It's just more strip development, right? And not any cohesive neighborhoods that are a great place to be. You have some cool stores and some cool amenities, but not that sense of place. And so that's the key, is how can you with intentionality prove the concept to the developers and say, look, we've done the studies and we say, we know you need this much more retail, you need this much more commercial. Here's your office requirements. Here's your square footage, how much you get per square foot. You can develop this, and it might be out of your comfort zone, but it'll be successful. We've done the math. And that's really what you're trying to do, is introduce, get the development community outside their comfort zone towards something that's going to have more long-term benefits.
Okay.
Can I make a quick comment on this?
Yes.
When we developed the Wasatch Choice Vision map collaboratively with communities, they all came forward and said, these are locations that we'd like to advance as centers, but these locations are not from scratch, right? The vast majority of them there's already a nugget of something there, or, you know, something to build on around this concept. And so it's kind of building off of an existing framework that just has the potential to become something better. So it's really not fighting the market, it's kind of working with the market. And, you know, anecdotally, but I think it's not too far of a stretch to say that most developers would gladly exchange certainty and more intensity and a liberalization of what you allow for meeting the market demand, which is out there for walkable development, even if they're not used to providing that product.
Yeah, great point. The only exception, of course, to letting the communities decide is the 30 floor high rises plan for Morgan City, right? That's obviously really central to the plan.
No, that won't happen. Not
So-
unless somebody changes the code.
Right. And
And
that's
I
really
won't,
the point,
I won't
right?
be.
Incrementally, right? Over your dead body.
Yep, that's right.
So just to finish, a couple lessons learned. This has been a really great process, and a couple of things we've learned is words matter. So when we talk about alleys, you know, alley loading homes, townhomes, for example, people think crimes. You know, when you talk about density, that means bad people. That's, you know, crime, bad people, and you have to change the narrative and say, well, you know, your grandkids, where do you want them to live? What kind of homes can they afford? Well, they'll probably need to be in high density homes. Well, they're not bad people. So, but we have to be careful about the perceptions. Mixed use development is an interesting one. That's kind of what I talked about. In the development community, oh yeah, we do mixed use development all day long, but it doesn't feel like, you know, the definition that maybe Lon was talking about. Walkability, you know, is that, when we say walkability, I think people are saying you're not gonna have a parking lot, you know, there's no cars. And so we have to talk about pedestrian oriented development, right? And just change the terminology a little bit to say, no, it's just more walking friendly. You can park your car and then get out and walk. When we say retail development, well, in Utah, that means you gotta have a grocery store, right? And so understanding that's kind of what the expectation. And then high-end retail is really interesting, because when we were talking to people, we heard this constant theme that in Layton, we want high-end retail, and we're thinking, okay, you know, do you want a Gucci outlet, or, you know, Saks Fifth Avenue? What are we talking about here? And we were sitting at Sill's restaurant and watching the, you know, the Audis and the Teslas pull up, and this place is packed, and we're thinking, I don't think high-end retail in Layton means what we think it means, right? And that's what's really critical, is you really have to understand what people mean when they say what they mean. And it was kind of like, we kind of, you know, Farmington's got some cool stuff. We like some of that. And I think that's a commonality. It's just, we want to be proud of our community and keep up with the Joneses at some level. So it's really important to understand the community. Finally, you know, you got to challenge the data and challenge the assumptions. And we don't have time to go over this, but retail apocalypse, not so much. Layton's doing pretty good. Is Davis County over retailed? It'd be interesting to do a poll on this. Do you think, you know, vis-a-vis other communities and other counties, is Davis County over retailed? Well, we ran the numbers. It's not. It's not in the top 10 counties in Utah. So again, it's really important to not stop with assumptions, but go to where the data takes you. So that concludes our presentation. Marcia, is there anything else you wanted to chime in on, or Commissioner Farrar?
Marcia, do you have anything?
No, yeah, if I could just jump in, I think Mayor Petro and Commissioner Stevenson are both on. Mayor, I would love for some feedback. We know that this is not complete yet, but we appreciate that your thought process around creating town centers and city centers and economic development, and just wondered if you had any thoughts.
Yeah, sure. First off, I will echo what Lon said earlier. We do appreciate all the effort that's gone into this on behalf of your staff, and also the funding. But I think the key takeaway here is on these town centers is you got to look at the surrounding area and how you're going to develop it, because we, as you've seen on the map, we have several different sites throughout our city. Well, what we would do up off of Gordon and 89 would be different than what we would do, you know, in the Midtown area or even out west. And so I think that's kind of the beauty about town centers is you can kind of mold them to the surrounding areas and be able to meet those demands or those requests of your residents and what they'd like to see. Because the interesting thing too, this is just my own personal take on this, is as you were talking about, you know, where are the kids going to live? How are they going to get around? I'm shocked at how many high school kids do not have their driver's license, nor is it a priority for them. So that in itself tells you where the population trend is heading and why these walkable communities are that much more important. And obviously what we're planning for today is what's going to take place down the road. So in my opinion, I mean, I think we're on the right path here. I appreciate everybody's effort. And like I said, you gotta really analyze each area and make sure you plan it according to that area.
Well said. Commissioner Stevenson, are you on? You're muted.
Commissioner Stevenson, you're muted. We want you to be careful driving, so. Oh, boy.
Oh, boy, yeah.
Bob coming on, or do we know?
He is attempting to, but the most important thing is that he's safe driving.
See if does that work now?
There
Yes.
we go. Yay.
Can you hear
All
me?
right, go
Okay.
ahead, Bob.
So here's the thing, and again, I'm going to make fun of me and Gage here for a second, but you know, Gage and I are young enough that we can remember when the hot thing in town was when they built a shopping center where you had a 40,000 square foot grocery store, and then you had a drugstore, and you had a couple of clothing stores, maybe a jewelry store, and a big parking lot. And things have changed so much since then. And part of this is the fact, going right back to what Joyce said, is that, people, as far as driver's license, are not as important to them as they used to be to a lot of these kids. Not me, but I remember Gage, when he was 14 years old, was going out driving his dad's car when they were home. And, these town centers now are becoming more and more important because it's what people want. And it becomes that ability to create a neighborhood, in a sense, within a shopping area, to be able to have everything right there. And I think that this concept is really, really important. I think it doesn't have to be a concept, but it could be a variable concept, as Joy has said, creating these centers within your communities. And I believe people are drawn to them. And I think the thing too is long term, they stay pretty dang nice. So that's kind of my thoughts.
Commissioner Stevenson, I'll just add and echo what you're saying about the importance of these mixed-use centers. And Mayor Petro noted that the scale matters, that it has to fit the location. And I know, Al Matheson is on with us from the Point. The scale of what's happening at the Point may be very different than the scale of what is happening in Layton. And that's appropriate. Kirsten Swinier with Salt Lake County is coordinating a lot of development that's happening and economic incentives that are happening in various places in Salt Lake County. Again, that may be very different than what's happening in some of the smaller communities in Weber County that Stephanie's working on. And so I think this goes back to Mayor Petro's original point that the scale of development, there is no cookie cutter one size fits all. And I don't know if any of you that I've now invoked want to comment on that point. But there just is no one size fits all. It just takes careful work and thought at the local level to get this right.
Yeah, I'd agree 100%. Any other comments? So Jay, I'll just say this, Jason, Ron, thank you for that presentation. And Bob's exactly right. We're both at the age where we've seen some transformation in all our cities. I remember Ogden years ago when downtown Ogden was the heart of Weber County. That's where all the shopping took place. That's where everybody congregated for community activities. And then in the 60s, late 60s, 70s, that went away. Thanks to Mayor Godfrey and a few of our other mayors, and the current mayor is doing a great job. Marcia can also take credit for that. That's coming back. We're seeing the transformation in Ogden City, that the downtown really is the place to be from employment. We want that. And again, I think it was brought up in Lon and Jason's presentation that it has to do with demographics and where people want to live and work. And we're seeing that happening today across Weber County. But Andrew, I agree with you. It really comes down to the scale. You know, we're looking at Ogden Valley and what we're doing there. We've actually gone to the concept of creating what we call village centers, and which would be small, I guess what would reflect town centers, but to be village on a smaller scale to try to bring these same concepts into fruition and put people where they want to be, build them around walkable and preserve as much open space as we can. So great concepts. It's going to be interesting to see. And I'd hope we could pass these on across northern Utah and make them really part of the discussions, the policy decisions that are made in the future as we look at land use. So any other questions or comments? Andrew, anything else you'd like to add?
Not from me, unless anybody else wants to share their thoughts here.
Anyone else before we move on? So Jason, Lon, appreciate the great presentation, good information. I want to make sure we share this with, again, as all the cities and municipalities out there can take advantage of this. With that being said, let's move on to the Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity agenda item. As part of our said strategy for economic development capacity and the grant application facilitation, we've invited the Utah Apex Accelerator team and the Utah Innovation Center to explain their work. And at this point in time, I appreciate your patience. We're going to welcome Chuck, Darren, and Linda from the Apex Accelerator and also the Utah Innovation Center with Linda. So Chuck, Spencer, or Chuck and Darren, I should say, please take the time.
Thank you. Gage and Marcia, let me just ask before I begin, do you have like a hard stop at 3?
I don't believe
that would be great.
I don't, it's a hard stop. We try to maintain that as much as possible. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I will go accordingly here. Let me share my screen here. I presume you can all see that?
Looking good.
Okay. Well, again, Marcia and Gage, thank you for the opportunity. Apex Accelerator always looks forward to an opportunity to share what our program is and what we do. And so just quickly, I'm going to try to answer these 3 questions. Who is Apex Accelerator? And my guess is that only maybe a few of you, maybe half of you, might have heard about our program. About a year and a half ago, it was formerly known as as PTAC, or the Procurement Technical Assistance Center. And then the Department of Defense made some major changes, and now we're called Apex Accelerator. And in the presentation, I'll explain what we do, and then most importantly, what our value add is. So the first question, who are we? We are actually a program, even though I'm a state employee, a GOYO employee. The program itself is actually a Department of Defense program under the Office of Small Business Programs. And then they say we will partially fund you if you have a host. And fortunately for us, for many decades, our host has been the Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity, and they've been phenomenal. And so we are a business development program within GOYO, and we help and assist companies who want to pursue government contracting. So many of you are either business owners or you work with businesses. As you know, everything about being a business owner is business expansion, as you talked about previously, business growth, looking for opportunities. And for example, if you had a colleague that came to you and they said, hey, and I'm just going to pick on Jason, Jason for a minute. Jason, and you're a business owner. I just heard of an opportunity at Hill Air Force Base. One of their divisions needs to buy what our company sells. So you do your research, and you find that they have a small business office up at Hill Air Force Base, and that person is Lisa Stoker. And you call and you speak to Lisa, and you say, "Hey, I've got exactly what you guys need. How do I go about selling it to you?" And if Apex Accelerator has done our job right, Lisa is going to say, "Jason, or whomever it might be, you guys need to talk to the Apex Accelerator program. They're going to help you from A to Z with everything that deals with this procurement." So that, in an essence, kind of tells you all about our program. Basically, is that we are government contracting experts, and we are charged with helping Utah businesses pursue and win government contracts. What our value add is our results from last year, and these aren't exactly accurate because we're still in the month of June, so they'll change a little bit once the fiscal year ends. But so thus far, we have helped 81 new clients just this year be awarded a government contract. And in total, we've had 388 clients be awarded government contracts. And that total amount is approaching 1 billion. So that's our value add. That's what we contribute to the Utah economy. This gives you a pretty good idea. It's not all inclusive, but a pretty good sense of what our suite of services are. The Department of Defense, their number one goal for Apex accelerators, and by the way, there's about 96 Apex accelerators throughout the country, including some US territories. But our number one goal is to get our clients, meaning getting Utah businesses, defense industrial base and government industrial base ready. And there's a host of things that we need to do in order to make that happen. I've mentioned three. You have any company that's going to do business with the federal government must have and be registered in what they call SAM, the System for Award Management. So we help with registrations. We're going to help you develop a strong capability statement so that you know how to market yourself to these agencies, to these contracting officers. And then third is, okay, you've got a product, you're registered in SAM. How do I go about finding the opportunities? We're going to teach you how to create a marketing strategy so that you can do that. Anymore, we hold workshops and conferences almost weekly. Last month, we were up in Ogden at the Accelerate Wasatch event, and we had a matchmaking event with Hill Air Force Base and many of the big prime defense contractors. And I think that's where we actually met Marcia. Next week, we are hosting a workshop on how to write an effective white paper here at our office in downtown Salt Lake. More and more, these innovative agencies, these innovative federal labs are asking companies to submit a white paper solution to some of the things that they need. And so our clients and Utah businesses must be educated on writing an effective white paper. Come July, we're going to be in Utah County doing a winning government contracts, a 3-part blueprint for success. In October, we'll have a few more in between July and October, but in October will be one of our bigger events. Will be our matchmaking and vendor fair event that'll go for about 5 or 6 hours in Sandy, Utah at the Salt Lake Community College. And then also in October, we hope to bring a number of companies back up to Idaho Falls for the Idaho National Laboratory. They have a vendor day. Last February, we took about 10 companies, and we're proud to say that one of those 10 companies have already been awarded a contract with INL because of that. On the right-hand side of the slide, you see a number of services that we provide, and I won't go into too much detail with them all, but we provide GSA assistance. And most importantly, once you get that, once you're registered and you have a capability statement, and you sort of have a license to hunt, the question is, how do I find those opportunities? And you could spend hours every single day in the sam.gov website where the contracting opportunities are found. But thanks to Apex Accelerator, we'll build a search profile, and it's going to go out every day and find bids that match up with what you do. And then it'll email you those opportunities. And then if you need help, which you probably will, because sometimes those solicitations are complicated and complex, you can call our office and we will help. We can't write the bid for you, but we will help you understand what the solicitation is asking for. We will give you recommendations on what to put in your bid, and then we'll review the bid for you. And now in the last couple of years, the Department of Defense is focusing a lot of their attention on cybersecurity preparedness, connecting these innovative businesses that have that cutting edge technology that the Department of Defense so critically needs. And they've asked us for assistance in making that connectivity between the innovative technology business and that government-led innovation program. There's a lot of steps to navigating the complex world of government procurement, but we start with the first step, and we walk our clients through getting those necessary registrations. And please, if you have an opportunity to work with your businesses along the Wasatch Front, tell them that they don't need to pay to be registered in SAM. It's free. If they need assistance, they can turn to the Apex Accelerator for help. Step 2, as I've already mentioned, is finding those bid opportunities through SAM. And again, our bid matching and search profile will help you find those. Step 3 is identifying what agencies buy your services and product. Is it Hill Air Force Base? Is it Dugway? Is it BLM? Is it Reclamation? Which agencies buy your product? And we can do some research and locate those agencies so you know who you need to market yourself to. And then we tell our clients that establishing a relationship is no different than with your commercial clients. They need to know who you are. They need to know what your quality is, what your personnel is like, what your technical capability is. Really, the only difference is that they try to remain fair and objective. In other words, you're not going to be able to slip them jazz tickets or take them out to Lakai. They've got to remain fair and objective for a number of reasons. But that doesn't mean that you can't meet with them. That doesn't mean that you can't send them your capability statement. You can tell them about your company. You can attend their industry days and vendor fairs. And then you can come to our outreach events, which are, again, is almost weekly. We're going to teach and help these businesses learn how to respond to the agency opportunities, and there's several of them. A source of SOB, an RFI, request for quote, request for proposal, and in the essence of time, I won't go through the details of those, but just know that those are primarily the 4 areas that we help clients with when they find a solicitation that they may be interested in. And then we try to educate them on what these procurement opportunities are. Full and open means that Northrop Grumman and a small business of 3 individuals can submit bids on some opportunity. The cool thing is that the federal government, they have small and disadvantaged goals, procurement goals. So that means, I think last year the federal government spent over $600 billion on goods and services. What these set aside goals means is that 23% of all small businesses including the ones in Utah, they can have, a solicitation can be set aside just for small business. Same thing if you're what we call an 8A certified firm. The goal in the next year or two is going to be 15% for that. If you have companies, Jason, you mentioned the Layton Business District. I'm sure you have several woman-owned businesses. There's a 5% goal that all procurement, 5% of all the procurement should go to woman-owned small businesses. And the same thing for service-disabled veteran-owned businesses, a goal of 3%. And hub zones are primarily for those maybe in the rural areas, but we can talk about those another time. Our organization, we are a statewide organization. We have about 8 regional managers throughout the state. The ones that would probably pertain to you folks along the Wasatch Front is Paula Kramer, who covers Central Salt Lake City. Alex covers everything from about Murray north up to Utah County, including Sandy and Midvale and those cities in that area. And perhaps more importantly to you folks in Davis, Weber, and North Salt Lake is Darren Cobbler, who is relatively new. He joined our organization back in December, and he has an office in Kaysville. I think we have a commissioner or mayor up in Logan, mayor, and that's Troy McLean, who offices out of the Bridgerland Technology Center. Okay. And again, if you want to contact us and learn more about the Apex Accelerator Program, our services, how we can help you further develop and grow your business, here's our website. We have a designated email, and here are the 3 primary regional managers who are along the Wasatch Front. And with that, I'm pleased to take any questions that you might have. Yeah, and if not, we'll go to Linda.
Any questions for Chuck before we move on? Chuck, great presentation. I didn't realize you did all that. That's great.
Okay.
Linda, are you available?
Oh, there's one.
There we go.
Okay, I will make this quick. Thank you for letting us talk for a few minutes. And I'm also part of the Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity. So we are the Utah Innovation Center. So we support Utah technology innovation within the state of Utah. There's several things, and I'll go through this really quickly. We consult with Utah companies to win competitive research and development funding. Our clients have been awarded some money, and they also have additional impact from follow-on funding. We've received a couple of awards. And one of the facts I like to quote is in 2022, 80% of the total Utah award dollars came from current and former Innovation Center clients. So we like to think that we have impact within the state of Utah, and we're open to every small business in the state. So just if you're not familiar with the Small Business Innovation Research and Small Business Technology Transfer Programs, this gives you a little bit of an idea. This has been around since the 1980s, early 1980s, so for over 40 years. And right now it's about $4 billion that's awarded to small businesses across the country in a competitive process. And our office helps Utah small businesses hopefully get a bigger share of that amount of money. The SBIR STTR program, they've now branded themselves as America's Seed Fund. So it's early seed funding for innovative technology development. And so our office has been successful in helping Utah companies get more of this funding. So just quickly, to be eligible, this is for a small business. The small business is the applicant, but they have the opportunity to partner with a research institution or with other contractors. The company needs to be for-profit, at least 51% owned by individuals who are citizens or permanent residents in the United States. And they consider small business as anything 500 or fewer employees. However, many of the small businesses that win in this space are much smaller. The program is in phases. Phase 1 is usually about $75,000 to $275,000 for about a 6 to 12 month project where you're doing a proof of concept. The phase 2 is a 2-year project. More money can go up to 1.8 million, sometimes a little bit beyond. And then commercialization is outside of this program, but for many of these federal agencies, it's an opportunity to become get a direct contract with one of these federal agencies. The best thing that I love about this program is it truly is an investment in these small businesses. So they don't take technology ownership, they don't lose intellectual property, you don't have to pay back the funds. There is that one caveat there on loss of intellectual property. We know when night vision goggles were developed under this program, that was something that we needed for our national security. They were used and then licensed back to the company, but that's the only time we know that that ever happened. The agencies, I'll quickly go through this. There's 11 federal agencies. Those that are bolded in the darker color, they participate in both SBIR and STTR, meaning that they have a federal research budget extramural that's over $1 billion. The others are just in SBIR, but there's lots of opportunities. This is the funding. So you can see the Department of Defense has half of the money, so $2.2 billion, and the Air Force has the lion's share of that, at least half of that. With Health and Human Services, our biggest component is National Institutes of Health. There's energy, which I would say in the state of Utah, energy companies do really well. Also the National Science Foundation and NASA. And then there is all of those other smaller components at the bottom. We have companies that are awarded through the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Homeland Security, Department of Commerce, which is NIST and NOAA, which is Standards and Technology and Oceans and Atmosphere, Education, Transportation, and EPA. So what they're looking for is high-risk projects. And so if you think of your cell phone, if you have a smartphone, about 80% of the components in the smartphone were developed under this program. So when we think of the GPS system, even the internet started under these programs, and even the Qualcomm chip. But then there was a time they were looking for a better life vest because people were drowning. They weren't wearing what was available. So sometimes it's just trying to find a very practical solution to a problem that's a big problem, but then also it's very high-tech, high-risk projects. What you can spend the money for a small business, it really is about paying for the research and development so they can pay salaries, they have an overhead rate, they have a fee or profit that they can charge, that they can do anything with that money. The things that aren't allowed are lawyers, patents, marketing, constructing a building or creating a lab, and there's only certain times you can do travel. However, they have given some additional funding that helps now with marketing and patent costs. So just a program that I wanted to make sure you're aware of, that we have some funding through the state of Utah that we are able to offer microgrants and non-recourse loans. So these are for small businesses that are coming into this pipeline. The microgrants are for new applicants. So it's $3,000 with an additional $2,000 if the company is women-owned or small disadvantaged business or located in a rural county in the state of Utah. And non-recourse loans are for those companies that have been successful in this, and then they just need some additional funding to continue on. We're able to offer that as well. And just one quick slide, I wanted to tell you about some of the other things we do. We've started an innovation collaborative. I've heard that someone made the comment about like innovation districts. We started having quarterly meetings where we'll bring all of the economic directors, innovation centers, all of those together, and we talk about best practices. So that's something, if anyone on this call is interested, you can let me know. We also are over the Startup State Entrepreneur Challenge. If everyone has heard about the Startup State Initiative, I've included that link to the website there. You might have seen billboards that say start something here. I mean, that's all being done right now through the Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity. And our office is also in charge of the Governor's Medal for Science and Technology. So that's it. This is our team. I know that was quick. I didn't cover much, but I just wanted to quickly get through that. And I appreciate you giving me the time.
Linda, great presentation. Thank you very much. Any questions for Linda?
Commissioner, can I just say a couple of things?
Go ahead.
One of the things that I really believe in is a hub and spoke model, and this is a hub, and all of you are part of the hub. And I hope that maybe there was one little thing that Chuck said, or one thing that Linda said, or maybe Lon said, that you'll go out and you'll talk to the next person and the next person. And so I really believe that that's how we're going to make a difference from our committee, but into along the Wasatch Front. And so both Chuck and Linda are great resources for funding. I've used the Apex system before when I owned a small business, and up until recently, Darren finally got me off of the email, but I continued to get all sorts of information as far as being able to apply for. So it's a great program. And if there is need for more information, definitely these two can get you some more information. But hopefully you found something that you'll go out and tell your staff or somebody that you run into about these programs, because there's funding, definitely funding available.
Yeah, absolutely. A great resource. And we've got economic development people on from the counties, the cities. This is an opportunity for them as they reach out to their clients, the small cities that aren't involved right now with us. And let them know that these resources are there for economic developments. It's critical. Two great programs that we should all take advantage of within our cities and counties. Anything else, Marcia, from your side? Andrew?
Anything else?
Just echoing that, I just think it's fantastic that these services are available to help apply for the funding and the technical assistance. And as noted, we would love to and will push out this information that has been shared here with the entire list for the Economic Development District following this meeting. So just echo our thanks again.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
And thanks, Chuck, Linda, great information. Thanks to our other presenters. I thought it was very useful information. I know there's a lot of takeaways we can do from today's meeting. Marcia, thank you for putting this together. And I'm sure that if anybody has any questions or additional information that needs to be passed on after this meeting, Marcia or Andrew will make sure that you get that. So any of the great staff from the WFRC. Any other comments? Any other business that needs to come before the committee at this point in time? Let me just remind everybody that our next meeting will be Thursday, September 12th. Is that correct, Marcia?
Yep, that we've changed them from Tuesdays to Thursdays, so.
At 1:30? All right.
Yes, yes.
Okay. I don't see any hands raised. Rosie or Andrea, are we okay? Anybody have any final remarks?
We're
All
good.
right. Seeing none, I appreciate those taking their time out. I hope it was as valuable to you as I think it was to a lot of us up here. Everybody have a great summer. We'll see you in September. We're going to adjourn the meeting.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Commissioner Ferrari. We appreciate you.
Thanks.
Thank you.